Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to try to make some faux porthole art, and I wasn't too sure what to put inside. Mirrors are sort of typical. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Well, I think I found what I need to make the portholes, and I think I have an idea for what to put inside, so let's go have some fun. To make our portholes, I thought these plastic plate holders from the Dollar Tree were absolutely perfect, and you get 4 in a package. I picked this light green color because I liked it, but I think you do want to choose a color that isn't quite so strong. And the first thing we're going to do is cut those spokes out of the inside and save them because we're going to use some of them. Now, I did the first plate with scissors, and I didn't get a very neat edge, so I did the other 2 with my box cutter knife, and I ended up cleaning up the edge of the first one with my box cutter knife. So I would recommend using a knife for this. I'm doing 3 plates because I'm going to make 3 portholes, but of course you can make as many as you like. Now, cut off some of the spokes from that middle piece that you saved. We're going to use 6 spokes per porthole, so there are plenty of spokes here to use. Now, the other item I'm going to use on the portholes is these wooden round dowels, and I think I got these at Walmart. I'm not sure. I do think they have dowels at Dollar Tree. I know they have them pretty much everywhere. Home Depot, Joann's, anywhere you go you can get dowels, so this shouldn't be difficult to find. And we're going to cut 1-inch lengths of the dowels, so we're going to need 3 for each porthole. One of these dowels gave me all of the little pieces that I needed for all 3 of my portholes, plus a little bit left over. These happen to be 3/16 of an inch in diameter. If you don't have dowels, you could probably use another piece of one of the spokes, maybe just fold it or cut in half, but I liked the way the dowels looked. I'm just trying to imitate the closures or the hinges on the porthole. And different portholes open and close different ways. There isn't really a physical explanation for what these things are. I just have 3 spaces on the edge of the porthole, and I didn't want to get really complicated with trying to make closures and hinges, so I just thought I'll make something that looks reasonably like it's some sort of hardware that opens and closes the porthole. I found these a little bit difficult to cut, and I ended up using my miter shears to cut them. You could, of course, use a saw or I think a strong cutting tool. Now, with the plastic spoke pieces, what I want to do is fold them in half and glue them together. And fortunately, this is not difficult to glue plastic. I tried both E6000 and super glue, and I had luck with E6000, no joy with the super glue. So I just put a little dot of E6000 on the end of them, folded them over, and clamped them with a little clip and let them sit for about an hour to dry. Now we're going to paint these. I'm going to give them all an initial coat of paint because I thought it would be easier to paint them before I put the faux hardware on them. And maybe that's true and maybe it's not. This is the order that I chose to do this in. So the first paint that I'm going to use is this Folkart Metallic Bronze Metal. And I gave the portholes each 3 coats of this on the top. So the first coat you're going to find doesn't give you very good coverage at all. That's okay. Each coat gets easier, and by the 3rd coat, you're really just covering places where you didn't get coverage on the first 2 coats. Do let it dry thoroughly between coats because you don't want to make a mess by painting over wet paint. Now, to assemble our little faux hardware pieces, we're going to have 2 of the folded in half and glued spoke pieces with 1 dowel, and we're going to slide the dowel through the fold in those. And I didn't want it exactly at the top, I wanted it a little bit down from the top, and I just used hot glue to glue that together. And again, we'll want 3 of these little pieces of faux hardware per porthole, and you want to make sure that the 2 ends of that will fit into those little holes on the sides of the plate. And then I just gave all of those a couple of coats of the bronze metal paint as well. And those I needed to do in a couple of steps because I needed to paint the top and then the bottom, and I also needed to paint the inside of them. They really only needed 2 coats though. Now that everything has its coating of the bronze metal paint, I'm going to glue a little hardware pieces into those holes on the plates. And for this, I just used hot glue, glued them in, held them down, then turned the plate over and gave them a little bit more hot glue on the back to secure them in place. Now I'm going to give everything a coat of Deco Art Dazzling Metallics in Rich Espresso. Now I'm not positive you need the bronze metal underneath this, but I feel like that bronze color showing through contributes to the realism of the metal look. So we really need to do a paint technique on this to make it look like a bronze or brass porthole. One color paint is not going to do it. So I just painted over everything one coat with this paint. Now I do have a 2-minute technique on getting this sort of brass effect, but with verdigris. I am not going to put verdigris on these portholes. I might enhance them for Halloween, and when I do that, I might put a verdigris effect on them to make them look, a little older. But for now, I'm just doing the brass or bronze part of that effect. So we're going to do lowlights now, and for that, I use Folkart Multi-Surface in chocolate brown mixed with Deco Art Americana in burnt umber. So what I did was I mixed those together and I put them in the places that I thought wouldn't get a lot of attention if you were touching the porthole or cleaning the porthole. So definitely around the hardware, and then anywhere there's sort of a joining that looks like a joining of 2 pieces of metal, I put it there. So all the way around the perimeter where there's a difference in height. And then there are basically 3 places like that. And when I apply this, I don't want to be too heavy-handed. So I do dab it off of the brush a little bit, then dab it around those edges, keep dabbing until it doesn't look like paint that's been dabbed on. And sometimes you need to do a little bit of brushing too, but eventually it gets to where it just looks like metal of a different color. And then we'll add highlights. For highlights, I use Deco Art Dazzling Metallics in Champagne Gold. And I think you can pick your own highlight and lowlight colors. These are the ones that I think work well. And I just applied that on surfaces that I thought would catch the light or that might get touched a lot. So the tops of those little hardware pieces, the inner circle of the porthole, and then those flat surfaces around the sides of the porthole, and just a very, very light touch with this. And you can see the difference between the porthole that has the highlights and lowlights and the portholes that only have the 2 colors on them so far. It really does look more like it could be real metal. And finally, I'm just going to seal all of that paint in with a coat of matte Mod Podge. So just brush Mod Podge over that completely to seal it. Now I think what is going to make this really fun is if it looks like there's some glass in the porthole, and I was able to find some of the clear plastic cutting mats at the Dollar Tree. They seem to only have white ones lately at most Dollar Trees, but I was able to find a few clear ones, and you can buy the clear ones other places as well. So I'm going to take a piece of paper and press it into one of these plates so that I can draw a circle, which is the inside of the plate. And I'm going to use that as a template to cut out 3 circles from these cutting mats. You can get 2 circles from one cutting mat, so this will use 1.5. If you're able to find them at the Dollar Tree, you get 2 to a package. And eventually we will use hot glue to glue that to the inside. Now for the back, I'm going to cut a corrugated cardboard circle. So I just traced around the plate, and then I measured in a little bit more than 1/2 inch. And then I cut out that circle, and I had to adjust it a little bit. A perfect fit isn't critical here. We just need a circle that we're going to be able to press into the back of the plate. Now I want to paint some ocean to go behind my portholes. And you can see what I have here is a piece of white poster board. You can see I already was experimenting a little bit with paint. And what I learned with my experiment is I need to pre-mix all of the colors that I want, or most of the colors that I want. I need to have large amounts, and I need to have relatively large brushes, because you need to do this quickly because acrylic paints dry so quickly, because we're going to want to blend those colors together. So I'm just going to mix 3 colors, and I'm using blue and green that I already have. So this is a Craftsmart Dark Blue and a Jubilee Green. And I'm also mixing into one of those some black, and I'm mixing into another one some white. So I'm going to have a dark color for the bottom of the ocean, and then a medium color for the middle of the ocean, and then a lighter color because I want to have a look like there's sunlight filtering down through the water. And then I will continue to add to that white color and make it lighter and lighter because that's going to be a smaller part of this image. So once I had those colors mixed, I started at the bottom with the color that had a little bit of black mixed in, and I just painted as fast as I could at the bottom. And then I painted the medium color and blended that in with the darker color. And then I painted the lighter color, and I tried to concentrate the light at the upper corner of the image. So really, I think you want the brush strokes radiating from that top corner. And again, as I mentioned, I just kept mixing white into the lighter color and painting closer and closer to the corner and sort of dabbing it out through the paint so that it looked a little bit like light filtering down. I do not pretend to be an artist. This is going to be behind that plastic piece. It's going to be behind our mermaid. So I'm hoping it gives the suggestion of light through the ocean. The reason I'm doing such a large background is I want the 3 portholes to be related. So I want it to look like they're all looking out at the same ocean, but different parts of the ocean. Now you could put anything in your portholes. What I'm going to use is this mermaid from the Dollar Tree. And there are, I think, 2 styles of mermaid. I felt like this one worked better, but the other one where she's basically facing forward, that could be really cute too. So I think you could use either mermaid. I wanted mine to look a little more mysterious and a little less friendly, I guess. So this mermaid, and I'm going to use one of the mermaid tails. The mermaid tails come 3 in a pack. With a little bit of work, I was able to pry the starfish off of her head for later use. I put a little bit of painter's tape behind the holes and used a little spackle to fill in those holes. Now I have some macrame cord here, which I happen to get at the Dollar Tree. I don't see it there very often. You can, of course, buy macrame cord anywhere. And what I'm doing is cutting that into lengths to be my mermaid's hair and unwinding it and gluing it down with white glue. And what I did was I did it along the length of her hair and then left it long at the front, glued it down, let it dry. And then I sort of wrapped it around a little bit in the front to sort of make it look like bangs and then glued that part down. Just thought it would be easier to do that in 2 steps to make it look sort of like natural hair with bangs. And I can trim it with scissors to get it to fit to the shape well. Now for the tail, I thought I would put some of this on the tail, not the tail of the mermaid with the hair, but just the mermaid tail. I was looking at pictures of fish for inspiration for the colors for the mermaids, and I thought something like a betta fish tail, which just has that sort of feathery look, was what I was going for here with the tail. Now, I struggled with painting this mermaid, so I'm going to try to show you the final painting, but Of course, you can paint your mermaid however you want. I wanted to do the red hair sort of Disney Little Mermaid thing, but I was looking at a picture of fish that was very white, so sort of white and peach, and that was my original idea for the mermaid, and I just didn't like the way it looked. So you're going to see me painting over something that's already been painted, and I'm just changing my mind. So I looked for some peach paint first that I thought would work, and I ended up using this Ceramcoat coral color, and I painted the entire mermaid with that. And I mixed a little water in with it to paint the hair. I didn't want to make that too wet, but it was very hard to paint that, so a little bit of water helped the paint soak into the hair. Now I then mixed some Apple Barrel Harvest Orange into that and added some highlights to the hair. And I then mixed in some Apple Barrel Bright Red and used a very fine-tipped paintbrush and again put more highlights into the hair. Now when I was going for the fish look, I painted her face and arm white, and then I put some white sort of scales on her chest. Then I just did not love the way this looked, so I used this top-notch light peach color, mixed it with some white, and painted that for her skin tone. I think any natural-looking skin tone would have looked good. I just didn't like the white. It just looked too weird to me. I guess I need a more human skin tone for my mermaids. Off camera, what I did was I took that light peach and I mixed in a little bit of black, just a little bit, to give me a color to outline the entire mermaid. I also gave her a chin, a shoulder, and an eye, a closed eye, and I just felt like it looked better outlined, but I still basically hated it. So I used this Folkart Metallic in Emerald Green, and I painted her tail with that. I then mixed in a little bit of the original coral color and made her scales over the green with the coral color, sort of a coral swoosh, and then a coral and green mixed dab over that. I also put a little bit of green into her tail. And I do not love this mermaid or her colors, but I felt she was okay, so this is basically what I went with for the colors on the mermaid. Now, before I glued the starfish back on the mermaid's hair, I thought it might look cool if she had a little bit of a seaweed embellishment or hair decoration, and if that was a green, it would relate back to her tail. So this is a little bit of that lacy ribbon that you can get at the Dollar Tree in the floral section. It looks like seaweed, I think. Now, this one happens to not be from Dollar Tree. This one happens to be from Amazon, but it's the same sort of ribbon. The pattern's basically the same. And I painted it with that same Folkart Metallic Emerald Green paint that I painted her tail with. And I just cut this in pieces to look like sort of a seaweed ribbon and glued that down, glued the starfish on top of it, and I think roughly the same place it was originally. And then I thought that would be prettier if we added a few of these tiny little pearls, which I did get at the Dollar Tree, to the ribbon. Now for the tail, I thought I would do a sort of a gradient, so I used that Folkart Metallic in Emerald Green and also Folkart Metallic in Ice Blue. And I have 4 colors. I have the green mixed with a little blue, the blue mixed with a little green, and the blue. And I just painted from the top of the tail down to the bottom of the tail in a gradient, mixing the colors together. And then I painted the tail with the ice blue and put some of the other colors into that as a highlight with the fine-tipped brush. So sort of the mixed colors throughout, but more of the dark green towards the bottom. Now I laid the mermaid and the tail down on my background painting and then put the portholes over them to figure out how they're going to be positioned, and then traced around the portholes so I knew which parts of the background to cut out. It's important that these stay right side up so that it looks like the light is coming from one direction. So I cut those out, and then I used white glue to glue them to my cardboard circles. And I put something heavy on top of those so that they could dry relatively flat. Now we're going to assemble. So I used hot glue to glue the clear plastic pieces on the inside of the portholes. And that's the shiny part forward, the dull part towards the inside. And now you're just going to figure out what is the top of your background piece. And because I cut out those circles a little larger than the cardboard, I trimmed off the circles and then figured out how I wanted the porthole hardware to look relative to the inside piece. And then starting with the tail, which is the easier piece, figured out where to position the tail so it wouldn't interfere with gluing that background cardboard piece to the porthole, and used hot glue to glue the tail onto the background piece. Now I think what is really fun to add to this is some bubbles, and you can do this with hot glue. So I just put the porthole over the tail where it's going to be, and sort of held with my finger where I wanted the bubbles to be, and then on the inside, do hot glue circles. So just be careful to get the hot glue in a circle shape, and twist it as you're pulling it away so that you're minimizing the strings that you make. I tried to make bubbles in different sizes, and I did get some strings, which I then removed. But I think this gives it a really fun look. And then what I did was I just used masking tape to tape that background piece to the back of the porthole. And part of the reason I did this is because I am thinking that I might want to change these for Halloween, and that would be really fun. So I didn't want to do anything too permanent. But if you wanted a permanent backing to this, I would recommend gluing it into the porthole and then putting a nice back on it, like a piece of felt or a piece of cork. Now the mermaid is slightly trickier. That's why I wanted to do the tail first, because I'm going to have the top of her body visible through one porthole and her tail visible through another. And this will mean that we will have to cut the mermaid. It also means you have to get everything positioned correctly so that when you hang the portholes, it looks like you're seeing her natural body, the front in one porthole and the back in the other porthole. I cut her with a box cutter knife. And then I assembled in the same way, tried to get the positioning correct, glued her down to each of her respective portholes, figured out how the back should be within the porthole, and then I did bubbles on the front of each of the portholes. But again, do that on the inside with the hot glue and tape the backs down. And the final step is giving them some sort of hanger. So I used this florist's wire. This is the 19 gauge florist's wire that I got off of Amazon. And I just snipped a piece, made a loop and twisted it, and then hot glued that to the top back of each of the portholes. And again, you're going to want to make sure you have them positioned correctly so that you are getting that wire at the top of the porthole so that when they hang, the mermaid is going to look like she has one body. And here's the finished set of portholes. So, what did you think of our faux portholes? And what would you have put inside? Please tell me in the comments. I wanted to show you something. I think I had originally planned to do this and then I just forgot. I think I got all excited with the bubbles or something. So what I have here is some lights, spooky, and this isn't really a good option, but maybe some fairy lights. So if the light is coming, if the light is coming sort of from the top through the ocean, so really, I just want to really just put one in there. Yeah, so actually we want her swimming up toward the light. So a little bit more. One moment. Okay, so I'm gonna go turn the light on. I think that's kind of cool. I have another idea too. Okay, so this might be a little better. I'll turn the light on and show you what this is. Okay, so this is just a single LED and a 3-volt battery. The reason I like that is you can just tape the LED to the battery, or in another video I did buy some switches for these and I wired them up, not with anything fancy. But the reason this is good is because you can just slip it right in there and there's no lights that you have to figure out what to do with the rest of them. This is a yellow LED, but I would get a clear one, and I think that could look really cool. So I think there are some options with these. I had a lot of fun making them. I mean, actually, I don't know if you did this when you were a child in school. You get a paper plate and maybe you cut a fish out of construction paper, you glue it to the plate and you put some shells at the bottom and then you put plastic wrap or cling film over it, and you have basically this, maybe a slightly less sophisticated version, but maybe that's why I like this so much. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.